Liaison Garak Moy hissed as the bridge shook violently from another impact. He couldn't help but feel that the light cruiser he was on, the HMAS Huntsman, should have left the battlefield long ago, but the old human captain refused to abandon the fight. "Blast it, human. We'll get annihilated if this continues." This was supposed to be a simple mission for him. The Tukon Star Tribe were the closest galactic race to the United Interstellar Nations, a loose confederation of hundreds of human polities. The warlords Garak was subservient to had insisted that he learn more about human military doctrine for the good of the Tuco race, particularly space warfare. "It's just a routine patrol around a newly developed human colony," they said. "At most, you'll deal with rowdy smugglers or a pirate fleet," they said. "Then why in the boiling marshes is there a death cult raiding fleet here?" Around him, the human command staff he was attached to gritted their teeth in frustration. Their guttural human tongue barked out order after order. "Put us in a faster spin. I want damage spread out over the entire hull. Particle beam has sliced through decks 5A to 8B. Our reactors are reaching their limit. Just a few more minutes, you apes. New Sydney is halfway through her evacuation." Garak sunk deeper into his chair as he rocked to and fro. The number of G's pressing on his body was unbearable, and the juice that the human said was supposed to counteract the effect felt more placebo than anything. Despite the struggle to keep himself conscious, he made sure to pay as much attention to the battle. On the system map that depicted the binary stars and the lone habitable archipelago world that orbited it were 19 colored dots. 10 were blue, signifying the human forces, while the remaining 9 were death cult ships. Despite having more numbers, the defending side consisted of only 3 warships from the stellar Commonwealth of Australia, and the remainder were patrol ships or retrofitted civilian vessels. They had more before the fight began. 8 minutes had passed since the first laser beam streaked through the black void, and since then, the humans had lost 2 patrol corvettes and a single frigate crippled. In comparison, the Death Cult had a frigate lost with all hands, and even had a destroyer dead in space. That in and of itself was quite the heroic feat. The raiding fleets of those insane Zergs were infamous and lethal. They took anything and killed anyone for some deranged ideology with regards to entropy and how life was a sin. The fact these humans, a race new to the galactic scene, had put up such an even fight was simply miraculous. Garak even believed for a moment that he'd survive this day. That, of course, was until a second fleet emerged. "Captain, we're detecting multiple new contacts, a number of troop transports and..." Garak looked at the map and felt his spine chill with the largest dot, blowing a deep red. The Tuco faced the human captain with a great sense of urgency and fear. "Captain Aleki, that is a Delve Cult battlecruiser. The battle is lost. We must flee with those we have evacuated already." The human captain merely glanced in Garak's direction before returning to the detailed scans on the new threat. Garak grew irritated that his words fell on deaf ears, and wished he could stand from his chair if he wasn't glued to it from the high-G maneuver the ship was made. "Captain, we need to..." "With all due respect, Liaison Garak, the sailors of the Royal Australian Navy are not cowards. If we can buy one evacuation ship time to get out of this system, it is our duty to do so." "But this is suicide. There's no cowardice in retreating from a losing battle." "We still have a chance." The Tuco gawked incredulously at the human. The liaison looked around him and found the rest of the human command staff was still stoic in the face of death. Do they firmly believe they have a chance? Or are they just putting on a face? This level of bravery borders on foolishness. "Focus fire on those troop transports. They must not reach the planet." The Huntsman rocked violently, as a torpedo detonated a few hundred meters to their starboard. The red war lights flickered as the humans continued to put up a fight. In the far distance, the newly reinforced Death Cult fleet fought with renewed vigor. Like demonic creatures from the abyss, they drew closer to medium-range combat and began firing kinetics and missiles. The onyx-plated battlecruiser that led the assault disgorged a myriad of ordnances, like a crazed beast. The Huntsman was impacted yet again. This time a stealth snipe from a Gauss cannon punctured the hull, before exiting out the other end. "Status? Electrical cascade. We lost power to our light laser cannons and coal guns. Damn. Evasive maneuvers, just keep the bastards busy. I just received orders from Battle Group Impetus that help is on the way." "Aye, Captain." Garak felt a bit of relief at that. It seemed reinforcements of their own were on their way. He just hoped they wouldn't arrive at the sight of his floating, frozen corpse. The space battle continued in earnest. Ships continued to fall on both sides as they traded blow after blow. The space between them was alive with beams of light, and the trail of missiles and kinetics. The civilian vessels and patrol craft of the human side were quickly lost or crippled, ever since the Death Cult battlecruiser entered the scene. Bloody hell! Ugh! We're getting our asses kicked over. Ah, shit! The defenders' faces grew dire at the rapid losses. It wasn't long before only the 3 Ran warships remained in the fight against 6 raiding ships. A voice was heard across the bridge coming from one of the human vessels. This is the HMAS Redback. We've lost power to engines and New Sydney is pulling us into our orbit. We're knocked out of this fight. Copy that, Redback. Send your crew planetside and join the defense on the ground. Captain Alecki grunted in frustration. A sweat trailed down his temple. Damn. I thought she'd say a bit longer. How's the Recluse? At that moment, one of the red dots, a frigate, vanished. Afterward, the voice from its killer joyously spoke through the comms. Haha, scratch free. We're bleeding a tad, Alecki, but my destroyer still has teeth. Captain Tally, you beautiful woman. Garrett looked at the telemetries on the Recluse and saw how the female human captain had understated her damage. How this human warship keeps on fighting with such damage is unbelievable. They're like the humans themselves with their endurance and tenacity. Multiple holes were visible on the gunmetal hull of the human destroyer. Large areas were melted and fused as lasers scorched her plating. The stubborn vessel seemed unaffected as the guns fired at the enemy fleet. Rapid-fire kinetic projectiles spewed out of a dozen rotating barrels, while the last of her torpedoes flew out of her silos. These bloody shits are a bunch of whims, Alecki. Scratch 4. The captain of the Huntsman chuckled. You crazy bastard. Evacuation is almost complete. We should head to... Suddenly, the ship received its worst impact so far. The entire vessel shook and groaned as the Huntsman received a critical hit. What happened? The Death Cult battlecruiser, sir. We got hit by its main gun. Our engines got penetrated and we lost power on multiple decks. We're crippled, sir. The grave news was heartbreaking. Garrick felt his end was near. He wanted to kick and scream at his misfortune, but didn't have the energy to do so. He looked around and saw the cracks in the humans' expressions. Most seemed in peace with their end, while a few shook in fear. Captain Alecki let out a tired sigh before pulling out a cigar. The aqueous stench that emanates from the stick tickled Garrick's nose. He'd never gotten used to its smell. The Tuco looked on as the remaining Death Cult vessels accelerated in a frenzy. Their losses demanded retribution, and they were surely out for their blood. Before Garrick could decide whether he should join the defense against boarding pirates or end himself, the exuberant voice of Captain Talia echoed through the crackling speakers. Hey, Huntsman, you good? Captain Alecki smirked upon hearing her voice. We're in a bit of a pickle. The Huntsman is dead in the water. Yeah, I can see that. Those Death Cult wankers are really angry from how fast they're going. It's fine. The Recluse has this. Captain Alecki creased his brow at her words. Talia, what are you planning to do? My ship isn't doing too good. We have fires on multiple decks and our reactor is nearing critical. Our engines are bloody pristine, however. Captain Talia. Alecki spoke slowly before nodding with a stony expression. It's been an honor, old friend. Ha! I'll reserve a seat for you on the other side. I'll see you then. The speaker went silent, and Captain Alecki waved his hand, bringing down a large monitor that showed visuals on the Recluse. The destroyer was hurting badly. Even then, it never stopped firing. Its guns were visibly overheating, barrels going red, while her thrusters exploded into motion. The hunk of steel pushed forward like a knife through space, straight toward the nearing Death Cult battlecruiser. Captain Alecki barked out a final order to his crew. Empty everything we have. Keep that battlecruiser contained. Yes, sir. The Huntsman, despite being crippled, diverted the last dregs of her energy reserves to launch her remaining missiles. The salvo of ordnance flew past the Recluse and towards the enemy fleet. Come on, Recluse, give 'em hell. We open your path to Valhalla. The human destroyer continued to receive hit after hit. At one point, a beam penetrated the main engine room and cut power to her thrusters, but it mattered little as she already reached an insane velocity that couldn't be stopped. The battlecruiser realized its folly too late. Its design was made for straight-line acceleration and had little auxiliary thrusters to maneuver. It continued to pelt the Recluse in desperation. Garrick watched slack-jawed at the display. The sheer bravery that bordered insanity was mind-boggling and utterly inspiring. Finally, as the Recluse reached her final approach, the speakers on the bridge crackled, and her voice boomed. Witness me! With eyes locked onto the visual feed, The crew of the Huntsman watched as the Recluse easily broke through the battlecruiser's shield and sliced through its hull. The destroyer buried itself deep into the death cult vessel before her reactor finally blew. The blast covered an enormous expanse, and a beautiful light burst everything in the vicinity with its deadly glow, crippling a nearby frigate. It was magnificent. Witnessed! The crew of the Huntsman roared in celebration. Garrick watched as the humans continued to shout the word, pointing at the feed. A number brought their hands together in the shape of a V, as tears formed in their eyes. Captain Alecki remained seated, continuing to smoke his cigar, but it was obvious that the human felt the same with his massive grin. It didn't take long for Garrett to join in the celebration of sacrifice, as he shouted those same words. The absurdity of what had occurred seemed to have rattled the last two Death Cult vessels, and a minute later, reinforcements from Battlegroup Impetus had arrived, and finally scared off the bastards. The evacuation was successful, and the raiders repelled, though at a cost. Garrett remembered the event fondly, all those years ago. It was a life-changing moment that led him down a successful path in the Navy. The reptilian Tuco adjusted the collar of his captain's uniform, and lit a cigar as he stared at the Death Cult dreadnought in front of him. His subordinates, both Tuco and human, looked toward their leader in anticipation. Captain Garrick pressed his finger on comms set to wideband for all to hear. "This is Captain Garrick Moy of the battleship Wolfspider, to all vessels of the Vengeance Fleet. Witness me!"